So, here I am, telling my story to strangers on the internet because honestly, I don't know what else to do at this point. My marriage, well, what's left of it, feels like a sick joke. I thought we had it all figured out. No kids by choice, decent jobs, a good home. But I guess that was just my side of things. My wife, Sarah, she clearly had different ideas. It started so damn innocently, too. Sarah doesn't drive. She's always hated it. Said it made her too anxious. No problem, I thought. We live in a big city, so there are Ubers and taxis everywhere. She started using rideshares regularly, at first just for work and errands. Sometimes she'd text me about a chatty driver or complain about traffic. Normal stuff, right? Then she started mentioning this one driver more often. This guy named Mark. According to her, he was always available when she needed a ride. Super polite, and apparently fun to talk to. At first, I thought it was nice that she found someone reliable. She'd even joke, "Oh, Mark's my personal chauffeur now, huh?" It didn't seem weird, not yet. But then, there were these little shifts in her behavior. She'd come home later than usual, blaming it on traffic or catching up with Mark after a long day. The jokes about him became more frequent, and I remember thinking it was odd, but I didn't say anything. I trusted her. We've been together for 6 years. What reason did I have not to? Still, I'd noticed that her phone was always buzzing when she was home. If I asked who it was, she'd say something dismissive like, "Just work stuff," or, "Oh, nothing important." If I ever pressed a little harder, she'd get annoyed, flipping the conversation to make it seem like I was being nosy or paranoid. I wasn't, though. At least, not yet. One Friday night, we were supposed to have a date night, a little dinner at this place we loved. But she bailed last minute, claiming she had a work emergency that came up. I thought it was strange since she never mentioned anything about working that night, but I let it go. We've all had bad weeks, right? But she was dressed way too nicely for some supposed work thing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next few weeks, her mood shifted. She was irritable, easily frustrated with me over the smallest things. If I asked her how her day was, she'd snap. If I suggested doing something together, she'd roll her eyes and make up some excuse. The late-night, work emergencies became more frequent, and the distance between us was growing, like this invisible wall had been put up. Looking back, it's so obvious what was happening, but at the time, I just didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe she was stressed, or maybe we were just going through a rough patch. I never imagined that it had anything to do with Mark, the friendly Uber driver she spent way too much time with. That thought never even crossed my mind. Until one day, everything changed. I remember the day everything came crashing down like it happened 5 minutes ago. It was a Wednesday, just another regular midweek day. I came home from work earlier than usual. Sarah had told me she was going out for dinner with some coworkers that night, and I thought I'd surprise her by stopping by and maybe even joining them. You know, trying to bring back a little spark. But when I pulled into our driveway, her car wasn't there. Weird, I thought. Maybe she took an Uber, as she sometimes did when she planned on having drinks. I didn't think much of it at first. I went inside, tossed my bag down, and was about to grab a beer when something inside me told me to check her location on the Find My app we shared. It was something we had set up years ago for convenience. Safety reasons, she'd always said. I hadn't used it in ages, but I thought, why not? Her location? Nowhere near the restaurant she claimed to be at with her colleagues. Instead, it was some random street on the edge of the city, near a park I'd never heard her mention before. My heart started pounding, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe she'd gotten a ride and they were heading somewhere else. Maybe the app was glitching, right? But my gut told me something different. I hopped in my car and drove, telling myself I was just being paranoid. I kept thinking, this is your wife. Sarah would never do something like that. There has to be an explanation. The drive felt like hours, though it was really just 30 minutes. I pulled up to this quiet street lined with trees, a small parking lot in the distance. And there it was. Parked near the back was a black sedan with tinted windows. My stomach dropped. It was an Uber. His Uber. I parked at a distance, not sure what to do. I didn't want to believe what my mind was telling me. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who jumps to the worst conclusions. But something felt off, terribly, terribly off. I approached the car slowly, my footsteps feeling heavy like I was walking through quicksand. And then I heard it. I heard them. Moans. Breathless voices. Sarah's voice. My head started spinning. My body felt numb, but I couldn't stop myself from moving. I crept closer, peeking through the barely open window, and my world fell apart in an instant. There they were, Sarah and Mark, having sex right there in the back seat of his Uber, like two animals who couldn't even wait to get to a hotel room. I felt like I was watching someone else's life crumble. This couldn't be my wife, my Sarah, the woman I'd loved and trusted for 6 years. The sight of her with that driver, the man she had laughed about like he was just some funny acquaintance, made me want to scream, but I didn't. I stood there, frozen, as my chest tightened, my heart pounding in my ears. Then, as if sensing something, Sarah's head snapped toward the window, her eyes locking onto mine. For a split second, she froze. Panic flickered in her face, but then, just as quickly, she yanked the door open and got out, scrambling to adjust her clothes. She didn't apologize. She didn't even seem embarrassed. She just stood there, arms crossed, like she'd been caught doing something minor, like spilling a drink. "What are you doing here?" she spat, her voice cold, accusatory. She acted like I was the one in the wrong. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to choke out. "You're asking me what I'm doing here? Sarah, what the hell is this?" I gestured wildly to Mark, who was still in the car, looking awkward as hell, fumbling with his pants. Sarah rolled her eyes, like this was nothing. "Don't get so dramatic. It's not what you think." "Not what I think?" I exploded. "I just saw you with him. In the back of his car. You've been screwing the Uber driver?" Sarah's face twisted into this sneer, like she was disgusted with me. "You wouldn't understand," she said sharply. "You've been so checked out lately, always busy, never paying attention to what I need. Mark listens. He's there for me in ways you've never been." I was stunned. Was she seriously trying to justify this? "I've been checked out? You've been sneaking around, lying, and this is somehow my fault?" She threw her hands up, sighing like she was completely over the conversation. "Don't act like the victim. You're always working, always distracted. Maybe if you'd actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to go to someone else." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her complete lack of remorse, the way she flipped everything to make me seem like the one to blame. It made me feel sick. Mark stayed quiet in the car, barely making eye contact. He looked like he wanted to disappear, but I wasn't interested in him. My focus was on Sarah, the woman who had lied to my face, who had been having sex with this random driver while I was at home, oblivious. I couldn't even respond. I just turned and walked away, my mind buzzing with 1,000 thoughts at once. I needed air, space, anything to escape the nightmare I was living. I wish I could tell you that I handled it better, that I was calm and composed. But the truth is, I drove home in a daze, heart pounding, mind racing, and by the time I parked in our driveway, the anger hit me like a wave. How could she just stand there? How could she act like I was the problem? Like her screwing a random Uber driver was somehow my fault? I couldn't wrap my head around it. When Sarah came home later that night, hours after I had caught her, I was already pacing the living room. She waltzed in like nothing had happened, like we hadn't just gone through the most explosive moment of our marriage. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice low, my anger barely contained. She didn't look nervous. In fact, she seemed more annoyed than anything else. She sighed dramatically and dropped her bag on the couch. "Oh God, what now?" That did it. I exploded. "Are you kidding me right now? You seriously think we're just going to ignore what happened today?" I yelled, my voice echoing in the quiet house. "I caught you with him, Sarah. You can't just walk in here like nothing's wrong." Her face twisted, and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Stop being so dramatic. It's not like I'm in love with the guy." I blinked at her, stunned. "That's your defense? That you're not in love with him? So what? You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and you think this is just, what, a phase? A fling?" She looked at me like I was being ridiculous. "We didn't start out that way. He's just, I don't know, someone who's fun to be around. You're always so stressed out, So busy. He made me feel alive. The words stung, but they weren't enough to distract me from what really mattered. Sarah, you've been lying. Over and over. You lied about work, about where you were, about everything. How long has this been going on? She rolled her eyes. It's not like I kept track of the exact dates. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone, already pulling up a lawyer's number. I can't do this anymore. We're done. I'm filing for divorce. That's when she lost it. Sarah's entire demeanor shifted. 1 second, she was dismissive, cold, and uncaring. The next, she was screaming. You can't be serious. Divorce? Over this? Are you out of your mind? She stormed toward me, hands flailing, her face twisted with rage. You're really going to throw everything away over one little mistake? Little mistake? I shouted back. Sarah, you've been screwing around with some random driver, lying to me for God knows how long, and you expect me to just stay? She scoffed, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. You're such a coward. You never fight for anything. You just want to walk away the second things get tough. What about all the years we've spent together? You're willing to throw all that away over a mistake? I was furious. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash, Sarah. This was a full-blown affair. You didn't just mess up once. You made a choice, over and over again, to betray me. She lunged at me then, slapping my phone out of my hand. You're not divorcing me. I won't let you just ruin my life because you can't handle the truth. I was too stunned to react. I had never seen her like this, hysterical, angry, and completely unwilling to accept any responsibility. It was like she had morphed into someone I didn't even recognize. The woman I had loved for years was gone, replaced by this cold, raging stranger. She tried to grab my phone again, but I pulled away, staring at her with a mixture of disbelief and anger. Ruin your life? You've already done that, Sarah. I'm done. The next few days were a nightmare. Sarah wouldn't let me out of her sight. She was everywhere, constantly trying to talk things out or beg for forgiveness, only to turn around and blame me the next second. You're blowing this out of proportion, she'd say. It didn't mean anything. You're the one who's making this worse. She started trying every tactic in the book. 1 minute, she was crying, telling me that she loved me, that we could fix things. The next, she was screaming, throwing things across the room, calling me weak for even thinking about divorce. You think you're perfect? She screamed one night. You've never been there for me. You've never made me feel like I mattered. It was insane. I couldn't even keep up with her mood swings. 1 minute, she was the victim. The next, she was trying to tear me apart. It was all a game to her, like she was trying to manipulate me into staying, to make me feel guilty for even thinking about leaving. But I didn't cave. Not this time. The turning point came when I called a divorce lawyer. I made the appointment while Sarah was at work, knowing full well she'd flip if she found out. When I met with the lawyer, he asked me for all the details. I laid everything out. Sarah's affair, the lies, the manipulation. He listened, nodding, before leaning back in his chair. You've got a strong case, especially with the infidelity, but be prepared for a fight. She doesn't seem like the type who will let this go easily. He wasn't wrong. When I served Sarah the divorce papers, she lost it. I came home that night, and there she was, holding the papers in her hand, her face red with anger. What the hell is this? She screamed, shoving the papers in my face. What did you expect? I said, keeping my voice steady. You cheated, Sarah. This is what happens. She threw the papers across the room, screaming at the top of her lungs. You bastard. You think you can just walk away from me? I'll make your life hell. True to her word, Sarah didn't make the divorce easy. She fought every step of the way, contesting everything. Our finances, the house, even the dog. She hired a lawyer and started dragging the process out as long as possible. Every day felt like a battle. She would call me at all hours, leaving nasty voicemails, or show up at my work, making a scene. She started spreading rumors, telling our friends that I was the one who had been cheating, that I had driven her to the affair because I was emotionally abusive, or never there for her. I lost friends because of her lies. People started distancing themselves from me, believing her sob story while I was left picking up the pieces. She didn't care how much damage she did. She just wanted to hurt me, to make me suffer because I had dared to leave. Then, one day, something strange happened. I got a call from Sarah's lawyer. Apparently, Sarah was trying to reconcile, claiming she wanted to call off the divorce. At first, I laughed. There was no way in hell I was going back to her after everything. But then I found out the reason behind her sudden change of heart. Mark, the Uber driver, had ghosted her. He had dropped her the second things got serious, and she was desperate to come crawling back to me now that her fling had fallen apart. Sarah showed up at my door a few days later, looking tired and defeated. She tried to act sweet, telling me that she was ready to fix things, and that she had realized how much she loved me. It was all an act, though. I could see through her lies. "We can make this work," she said, reaching out to touch my arm. "We've been through too much to just throw it all away." I pulled away from her, my patience long gone. "Sarah, you're only here because your little fling didn't work out. You've lied, cheated, and manipulated me for months. I'm not doing this anymore." She tried to cry, playing the victim again, but it didn't work this time. I wasn't falling for it. "I'm done," I repeated, my voice firm. "You need to accept that." When she realized that her attempts to win me back weren't working, Sarah's true colors came out once again. She started threatening me, saying she'd ruin my life if I went through with the divorce. "You think you can just leave me?" she screamed one night, slamming her fists on the kitchen counter. "I'll make sure you lose everything. I'll tell people you abused me. I'll destroy your reputation." It was exhausting. Every day was a new fight, a new round of her trying to twist the narrative in her favor. But I held my ground. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. Things reached a breaking point when Sarah tried to sabotage my work. She showed up at my office, causing a huge scene, yelling about how I had ruined her life and how I was the real villain in all of this. My boss had to escort her out, and after that, I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. I got a restraining order against her. It was the only way to stop her from coming near me or my workplace again. The divorce dragged on for months. Sarah contested every single thing, making ridiculous demands for spousal support, trying to take the house, even though she was the one who had cheated. Her lawyer was just as nasty as she was, throwing accusations at me and trying to paint me as the bad guy. But in the end, the truth won out. The evidence of her affair, her manipulative behavior, and the restraining order all worked in my favor. The judge saw through her lies, and I was granted the divorce without having to give her a cent more than she deserved. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free from the lies, the manipulation, the constant chaos that had defined the last few months of my life. Sarah tried to contact me a few times after that, but I blocked her number and moved on. She was nothing more than a bad memory now. It's been a few months since the divorce, and I'm finally starting to rebuild my life. I've cut ties with the people who believed her lies, and I've started reconnecting with friends who supported me through the whole mess. It hasn't been easy. Some days, I still think about how everything went wrong, how the woman I loved turned into someone I didn't even recognize. But I'm moving forward. I've learned a lot about myself and about the kind of person I deserve to be with. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you can never truly know someone. Sarah wasn't the person I thought she was, and her affair with that Uber driver was just the tip of the iceberg. But I'm stronger now. I've been through hell and back, but I've come out on the other side. And while I'll always carry the scars of what happened, I know that I'm better off without her. I'm ready to start the next chapter of my life, one without lies, manipulation, or toxic relationships. Thanks for reading my story. It's been a hell of a ride.